This is Coach Lee, and you're listening to The Door Report.
Welcome back into The Door Report, and welcome into episode 352 on a rainy but warmer Tuesday evening, February 3rd, 2026. I am Will Byrum, joined as always by my co-host, Trevor Hulan, a.k.a. Hack Squad, Jim Duggan. We are also joined by our producer, Phoebe, on the table here at first. Old Trevor is a little under the weather.
We're battling through, guys. We're battling through sickness. We're battling through illness. But hey, we're not pulling a Mason Nicholson. We're gonna go out. We're gonna give our effort regardless.
Head body,
baby.
The Door Report is presented by 615 Collectibles. If you're into sports cards or sports memorabilia, check out 615 Collectibles on eBay. Items include NFL team packs, graded cards, individual cards, and more. Shipping is always fast and free. Next up, Rhoback Activewear. There is only one way to describe Rhoback: best fit, best feel. For those who aren't familiar with Rhoback, they are completely changing the game with their incredibly comfortable activewear. Rhoback has released so many items within their new licensed game day collection, and it's our favorite. With novel polo designs and clean hoodie and quarter zip designs for some of your favorite schools, it's definitely worth checking out. Check it out. I'm wearing it right now.
Looks great.
Beautiful stuff. Nobody else in the market is pairing these levels of custom designs with this quality of activewear. I'll tell you one company that's not. Fanatics. I'll tell you that.
Ooh, yeah. Fanatics is op number one up there with ESPN's UI.
Fanatics is above. Fanatics is my number one.
Yeah.
I've hated Fanatics for a long
I can't
time.
tell you how many times Fanatics has just stolen money away from me.
Rhoback's everyday shorts or their Delta performance pants are the perfect pairing as well. They're both super comfortable, have an elastic waistband, and great fabric that is made to have the appearance of a nice short look, but the comfort for a day on the move. Rhoback has also been proudly leading the NIL charge, having signed partnerships with multiple college football stars, both past and present, and are becoming the go-to brand for college athletes across the country. You can use code VAN20, that is VAN20, all capital letters, no spaces, on Rhoback.com for a generous 20% off for all new customers. That's spelled Rhoback, RHOBACK.com. That's 20% off all performance polo shorts and more with code VAN20. Last but not least, the NIL store. Visit nil.store/doorreport15 and check out some of the best gear available from your favorite. Don't bite me during the ad read, Phoebe. From some of your favorite Vanderbilt athletes, use code DoorReport15, all capital letters, no spaces, for 15% off your entire order. Get some Tyler Tanner merch. There is a new hoodie on there. New design across hoodie, sweatshirt, t-shirt that says Tyler Tanner is really good at basketball.
Yeah.
And I've got my eye on it. I'm thinking about pulling the trigger on that one.
I saw that one. I need a AK Okariki. Which apparently I found out is how you actually how you pronounce his name. No, I was told by Vanderbilt it's AK Okariki.
Okariki. Okay.
I just found that out from Vanderbilt.
Is this going to be like a Junior Cheryl situation where we were told based on the pronunciation that it was, what did they pronounce it for? Like Sherelle.
It was Cheryl, then Sherelle,
and then they were like, no, and then Cheryl was like, no, that's wrong. It's back to Cheryl.
Yeah.
Because they did it in the enunciation guide. And they had it incorrect, so then it was announced incorrectly for like 2 days. Yeah. Whatever. So Okariki.
That's what I was told by somebody at
Okariki. All right, we'll see. We'll see if ESPN announcers adjust to AK Okariki or AK Okariki. That is going to throw me off now. Whatever. All right. The ad reads are out of the way. We are going to be joined on this episode by our very own Vanderbilt insider / Vanderbilt baseball expert, Alex Kurbegov, Alex Scoop God. He'll be joining us after the intro in segment 1 and segment 2. In segment 1, we're going to be talking a little bit of football, very briefly, Diego Pavia's performance at the Senior Bowl. Then we're going to go into a brief women's basketball update, get Alex's thoughts on Vanderbilt women's basketball, where they're currently sitting. We're going to recap Vanderbilt's, we won't call it a pretty one, but a victory over Ole Miss, and then we will briefly preview Vanderbilt's 2 upcoming games against Oklahoma and Auburn. Then we will hit the TDR cocktail break, and then Alex, in segment 2, which will be the bulk of the episode, is going to preview Vanderbilt baseball, the upcoming season that is sneaking up on us very quickly. First game of the season, 10 days, February 13th, the day before Valentine's Day. So it is sneaking up quickly. Alex will take us through that. And then we have premium message board questions. So a lot of those are baseball related, directed at Alex. Some of them are basketball, but Trevor, not a ton has changed since we last recorded, and maybe don't take into account your current health meter. But what are the vibes at right now?
Not including my health meter, vibes for Vanderbilt basketball. I was at a 10 out of 10 for a really long time. Deservingly so, because Vanderbilt was playing 10 out of 10 basketball. Vanderbilt has gotten their mojo back. I don't want to get back to 10 out of 10 because what's going to happen is if I give myself a 10 out of 10 and they drop a game, I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, the season's over for like 30 minutes. Then I'm going to snap back out of it and like use logic and reason. So for that, I'm going to give myself a little bit of grace. I'm going to go 9.6.
9.6 out of 10.
The Duke Miles injury hurts a little bit. Do we get Frankie Collins back this weekend against Oklahoma? Who knows?
That could shift the vibes tremendously.
Could shift the vibes greatly.
I want to get to segment 1 really quickly. I mentioned it during the Roback ad read. The one thing I want to get off my chest in the intro is Fanatics. Just how bad of a company that is.
They always have been. They always have been awful.
Just destroyed everything that they have ever put their hands on. Just wrecked. They've gotten involved in sports cards recently with Panini. Destroyed it.
Just
They bought Tops. It's basically Fanatics versus Panini now.
Yeah.
They bought Tops. Tops, horrible.
Yep.
All of the gear associated with every single event's just terrible, and they have a monopoly on it. They bought Mitchell and Ness.
Yep.
And just destroyed that product that had built up so much brand value. That's been a popular thing on social media to trash them. I just had to jump on top of it.
They destroyed Nike Baseball 2 years ago whenever they were in charge of making the baseball uniforms for Major League Baseball. And they came out with that ultra thin material to where you could literally see like their sliding shorts. The name across the back of the jersey was legitimately in a 4-point font. I hate Fanatics. I love the city of Philadelphia because I love the Eagles. But if Fanatics ever, here's the issue too, is this is what's going to kill me. Eventually the NFL, like college football and like every other sports league, is going to allow patches on their jersey. And the moment Fanatics is like, hey, we'll smack a patch on the Eagles jersey, I might stop watching football. Also, we'll keep it Vanderbilt related. Dear God, please, guys, I don't care how much money you are giving up. Please hear me. Whoever's in charge of this, I do not care how much money you are leaving at the table. Do not put a patch on the Vanderbilt football uniforms. Please do not do it. I don't care if you're leaving $2 billion at the table. Do not put a patch on. I like the Nike swoosh and now the corporate sponsorship patches have legitimately ruined the look of Major League Baseball uniforms, which for the longest time, hot take, I'm a baseball guy, but I don't think this is a hot take, truly have been like some of the most iconic uniforms in all of sports. The Nike swoosh and corporate patches have ruined the look of Major League Baseball uniforms. Now, I understand that's a hot take. Now, if, I don't know, let's say Jeff Bezos is like, hey, I'll give you guys $1 billion to wear an Amazon patch on your jersey, and like you would be the richest team in college football. I'm not playing around. I legitimately would be like, don't take the money. Don't put a patch on. It ruins the purity of the sport.
I agree with you in principle, but in reality and where we are, Vanderbilt needs to put a patch on that jersey. In reality, where we are. I understand what you were saying from the purity. I can agree. I can get on board, but other teams are going to do it, and Vanderbilt can't fall behind in any aspect.
Who do you think Vanderbilt football's patch sponsors are going to be? If you had to guess, it's not going to be First Bank.
I have no idea. I have probably a healthcare company.
HCA,
something like that.
The Vanderbilt University Medical Center, because they're no longer affiliated with the university; they're their own entity.
Yeah, I'm thinking a healthcare company.
If they put a VUMC patch on there, like I could be like, okay, like
it's gonna be crazy to see what ends up being put on these jerseys. But it is what it is. That got a little off track. We will be being joined by Alex in segment 1. But before we get to segment 1 and segment 2, we are now a part of the On3 Publisher Network. Visit thedoreport.com today and subscribe to a monthly or annual premium membership and support TDR for access to premium content, as well as our premium message board behind closed doors. You can sign up today for just $1, and you also get a complimentary year membership to The Athletic if you sign up today at thedoreport.com. Also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Door Report. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Our podcast is available on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and Google Podcasts. And while you're at it, give our podcast 5 stars and review on iTunes or Spotify. It's now time for segment 1. Welcome back into The Door Report, and welcome into segment 1 of episode 352. Me and Trevor still here. However, now we are joined by TDR regular guest and TDR's very own Vanderbilt insider and baseball expert, Alex Kurba, Scoop God / Alex Kurbegov. Alex, thank you for joining once again here on TDR.
Thanks for having me once again.
And listen to that audio.
Oh, so Alex. Crisp.
Just day by day, we get better and better. I mean, that's
got a crispy new mic,
Every time we have Alex on, somebody, like multiple people comment on Twitter and on the board, and they're like, we love Alex. Have him on more. He's the best thing that ever happened to TDR. The people love Alex.
The people can't get enough. Understandably so. Phoebe can't get enough. Just jumped up on the table for a better view.
Says, I smell a Eastern European.
So in segment 1, we are going to quickly talk some Vanderbilt men's hoops. And then in segment 2 is going to be the bulk of this episode. Alex is going to take us through a full VandyBoys baseball preview for 2026 as the season is quickly approaching. Then we will go to premium message board questions. But in segment 1, I lied for a second. We're going to actually start off with football. We talked about it last episode, just briefly. Diego Pavia playing in the Panini Senior Bowl. That game has now happened on Saturday. Diego Pavia was the starting quarterback for the national team. The national team lost 17-9. Diego Pavia was 10 of 13 for 78 yards. And Pavia did have a forced fumble on his first drive of the game, his first possession as quarterback in the Panini Senior Bowl. I think overall, watching the game, his offensive line was not good.
Yeah.
He didn't do anything that was like phenomenally incredible, but I thought he played fine. I don't think the teams were split extremely evenly between the national team and the American team. But Garrett Nussmeier was the MVP of the Panini Senior Bowl. Any impressions from you guys about Pavia or about, I don't know if this did anything either direction for his quote unquote draft stock, but
I don't think it did anything either way, to be quite honest, y'all. Then again, like I'm not super familiar on how like Senior Bowls or Reese's Bowls, Panini, or I guess the Panini Bowl form of the Reese's Bowl, how much that actually does for a player's stock, because like particularly a quarterback like we saw with Pavia, the reps are so limited. So like what more information can you get about Diego Pavia from those 3 possessions?
Well, you also have the practices.
Right, with the practices, yeah, but like that information that like you didn't already have from the season. I think that's my question.
Yeah, I almost think it's like an advanced look at some of the top players in the senior class from an NFL scouting perspective. I mean, you get official heights and weights, that kind of thing. You see guys throw in a practice setting, and at this point, I think we'll see. It's going to take a team or 2 teams falling in love with Diego Pavia for him to be one of those draft picks in the 5th through the 7th round, or come out and be an undrafted free agent. Either way, he's going to end up with a play somewhere for training camp. It's just whether or not that's a draft pick or not. And I don't know. At this point, I'm a lot more split than I thought I would be. I just keep thinking the height is just going to be the overarching factor. Even though, I mean, right now, a lot of reputable places, I'm seeing a 5th through a 7th round pick and a lot of scouting stuff. Yeah. I mean, I think this is a weak quarterback class. So I think he's like on Mel Kiper's list. He's like the 7th rated quarterback in this entire class. So we'll see. Alex, I can tell you, I don't think you had any strong thoughts on the Diego Pavia Panini Senior Bowl performance. So
No, I find the Senior Bowl to be a slightly more serious Pro Bowl of like you got your best prospects, and then the game doesn't actually matter for anything, in my opinion. I think that the only people it matters for is people who don't have a lot of game tape on them. Like I feel like Jaden Ott is the kind of guy who he barely played at Oklahoma, and then he showed out in the bowl. That did some good for him, but for Pavia, he's a multi-year starter and Power 4 level, it doesn't really do much as an actual game. I do think that the practices helped him a little bit. I saw that his the velocity with which he threw the ball tested very well. It was actually top 10 out of all quarterbacks since 2018, which for everyone who tells me he has a horrible arm, that's pretty damn good, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that helped, and I think people saw that he is a viable passer at more than just the college football level. So I think that the practices probably helped him marginally, but I don't think the game did anything. I really barely watched the game at all. I watched that first drive and I turned it off after that because I was like, this doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I wish I could find that list that you're referring to because I saw it as well. And it was a list that you looked at and said, all right, well, this disproves one side maybe, which I'm even on that side, that I don't believe Pavia has an elite arm.
No.
I think he has a good arm. I don't think he has an elite arm. But you look at that list and he's slinging the ball fast. And then you look at that list of quarterbacks and think, maybe that doesn't matter that much, how many miles per hour you throw the football, because there was not one successful NFL quarterback on that entire list. I know Joe Milton was on there for sure, but I can't remember any of the other names because none of the other names are memorable names. So while that is something to show Pavia does have a solid arm, I don't think it's like an indicative thing of like, man, look at all these. It's Caleb Williams on there. It's all these starting quarterbacks. It's not really what it was. All right, that's enough football. We talked a lot of football, and we'll continue to talk football as Vanderbilt also announced when the Black and Gold Spring Game will be held. That will be April 18th.
I believe so.
So spring practice coming soon. We will be talking a little bit of football, previewing that. But until then, it's time to shift over to basketball for now. Quick update on the women's team. Going into last episode, Vanderbilt women's basketball and Shea Ralph had just lost their first game of the season to South Carolina, 103-74. They followed up that performance with another loss at home to Ole Miss, who was ranked 17th in the country at that time, 83-75. Vanderbilt, however, after that got back on the right track, beating Florida at home 82-66. So Vanderbilt women's basketball sitting with 2 losses on the season currently. Alex, any cause for concern seeing back-to-back losses, or is this just it is what it is? You're not going to play perfectly every night, and then you also ran into South Carolina.
Little bit of both. I will say that the game against Ole Miss was at a neutral site. It was in Birmingham. So I think that if anything just kind of adds to my case, which that game was weird for a lot of reasons. It was supposed to be at Ole Miss, ends up being at a neutral site. And in theory, that's supposed to help Vanderbilt. But I mean, I feel like when you get those last minute changes, you never really know, especially because it changed the team's travel plans. And I'm sure it interfered with the structure of their week and blah, blah, blah. So it's just a weird game. Florida at home, good bounce back in the end. I'd say that my main takeaway from those two is that this team has the talent to be an Elite Eight type of team. They're not very deep. The bench only goes 2 or 3 deep tops, but they have the talent. You saw in the second half against both Florida and Ole Miss. I mean, they outscored Ole Miss by, I think it was like 14 or 15 in the second half, and it easily could have been more if they made a couple of their open layups. And then I felt like the whistle went in favor of Ole Miss a little bit in that third quarter. So that interfered with the momentum that they had. And then second half in Florida, I think they scored like 32 points in a quarter and shot 75% in the second half. Like that was a absolute onslaught that took a 15-point deficit into a 15-point win. So there's no doubt in my mind that this is, especially when Galvin and Blakes are firing, I mean, it's an Elite 8 team by every metric. But at the same time, there's something happening mentally where I don't know what reason it is, but this is now the 4th game in a row where they just come out in the first half and they get dominated physically, effort-wise, defensively. They're turning the ball over a lot. I mean, the first half against South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Florida were all like truly putrid. And then even Auburn, they won the first half, but in the second quarter, they got blitzed by a really bad Auburn team. So my takeaway is less an indictment on the talent or the potential of the team and more a statement of, if you play, I mean, their remaining schedule is the hardest schedule in women's college basketball. That's by the metrics. It's a fact. They don't have a single unranked game left on their schedule, I believe. If you keep starting slow, you're not going to win many of those games. And they're already a tournament lock. They have secured what were the goals of previous seasons, but when you have aspirations that they do, you cannot afford to get into these 10, 15-point deficits in the first half and just look completely discombobulated. So that's my biggest overarching takeaway. And then I feel like I did want to hit on a little microcosm of that. And this is both a positive and negative thing, but I just want to talk about Aubrey Galvin for 1 second on the pod. As much shine as Michaela Blakes gets, I feel like Aubrey Galvin deserves I mean, she's not the scorer that Blakes has, but I feel like she deserves an equal spotlight, especially for this team. She's a freshman who comes in at like 5'6", and she's the smallest person on the court almost every time she's out there. And she legitimately toys with the defenders that go up against her and runs everything in the offense. Michaela Blakes doesn't have to do nearly as much ball handling as she did last year, thanks to the fact that this undersized freshman has just come in and been so good. I think that when she's on, she truly redefines the entire game. And leading into my previous point, tying it all back together, the fact that she is getting off to these slow starts, which I think is a byproduct of just inexperience and having to adjust to each different SEC defense, because some of them will blitz you with their size. Some of them, like Ole Miss, are going to be overly physical, even if they're not massive players. South Carolina is just both. And I mean, it's nothing you can do about that, really. And her continually having to kind of readjust to each defense and how they're going to play her really makes it that's what I think is leading to these struggles. So she keeps coming back in second halves. Like, her season averages haven't dropped at all because she keeps putting up 15 points and 6 assists in the second half. And Vandy comes on a miraculous comeback or reasserts dominance, whatever you want to call it. But I feel like Aubrey Galvin is the X factor for this team, and her consistency has the ability, or the lack thereof, has the ability to define how far this team goes, both in the SEC and the NCAA tournament.
There we go. Women's basketball breakdown from Alex Kurbegov. I think, Alex, you have now set an official record for the amount of time spent talking women's basketball on an episode of the Door Report, and that's a good thing.
Yes.
That's a good thing. Great informed information
Well,
from
don't tell
Alex.
South Carolina fans. I advocated for increased investment into women's college basketball, and that made me a racist sexist, according to South Carolina fans, because I just can't stand that Dawn Staley is having success. I'm like, wait, guys, reread what I said, please.
Well, you're trying to grow the game.
Yeah, I don't. That's a weird. There are different Twitter verses or X verses that you get into.
Mm-hmm.
Like, college football is its own separate world almost from college basketball, and NFL and NBA Twitter are separate places. Women's college basketball and WNBA sports Twitter verses are weird places. And I see them from the outside, just observing a lot of attacking going on. I see when anybody comments on anything, but that's sports Twitter in general, I will say. But yep. Alex raises his hands and bites his tongue as we move on to men's basketball. Vanderbilt men's basketball, only one game has been played since we last talked on episode 351. Vanderbilt had won 2 straight going into last episode. Vanderbilt's beaten one opponent since we last recorded. That is Ole Miss, 71-68. That game kind of like what you described with the women's basketball game against Ole Miss, Alex. Very weird game. Initially supposed to be played in Oxford at Ole Miss. Due to weather, was swapped to a home game for Vanderbilt in Nashville, played in Memorial on that same day on Saturday. Not a pretty game by any stretch of the imagination, but a win is a win is a win. Tyler Tanner was outstanding, 24 points. A.K. Okereke, as Trevor said, is the correct pronunciation in the intro.
Have you heard that, Alex? I was told by somebody at Vanderbilt it's Okereke.
So I actually had that exact thought during the game because, don't get mad at me, Vandy fans, growing up a Stanford fan, one of their best outside linebackers who's still in the NFL is Bobby. And all of his time, his first name is Bobby. And for the full 4 years that he was at Stanford, it was Bobby Okereke. As soon as he got to the NFL, it was Bobby Okereke. And so I have heard it pronounced both ways. And I actually thought to myself, is it Okereke or is it Okereke? I don't know. I just know that I've heard that last name pronounced different ways because I can't remember the country of origin, but it's not an uncommon last name.
Okay. Okereke, whatever it is.
People, we'll just say AK.
AK was the second leading scorer behind Tyler Tanner, got most of his work done from the free throw line, 17 points for AK, 11 of 13 from the free throw line. Neither team shot well. Vanderbilt or Ole Miss, both teams shot around 25% from the three-point line. Vanderbilt 25, Ole Miss 27. Both teams didn't shoot well from the field overall. Vanderbilt shot 44%, Ole Miss shot 42. Total turnovers, dead even, both at 11. Points off those turnovers, almost even. Rebounds, dead even, 33-33. Points in the paint, Vanderbilt won just slightly, 30-24, and it was a tight ball game. Tight ball game in the stat book, an ugly ball game in the box score. That's what played out in front of our eyes. However, weird part about this game, even though it was a weird game, I had a horrible headache throughout the game, but I did watch the whole thing and forced my eyes open as my head throbbed. But Vanderbilt led the entire game. It went wire to wire. Yeah, it didn't feel dominant when you hear a wire-to-wire victory. It feels like, oh, that was a dominant victory. No, Vanderbilt just constantly was in a stressful zone leading that entire game. It felt like every time that Vanderbilt was about to, open up a little bit of breathing room and that was going to happen, it just didn't. And that can come from a variety of reasons. So Vanderbilt moves to now number 15 in the AP poll. Currently sitting at 14 in KenPom after a 3-game win streak. A lot of bracketologies, depending on where you look, have Vanderbilt at a 3 or a 4 line. Joe Lunardi currently has Vanderbilt as a 4 seed, playing UNC Wilmington in the same region as Belmont as a 12 seed. But that's way too early to really be looking at detailed bracketology, just kind of looking at general lines where Vanderbilt sits. So Vanderbilt still without Duke Miles, still without Frankie Collins. What did you guys see anything in that Ole Miss game that raised red flags for you moving forward without those two guards?
Alex, you want to go first?
Sure. I mean, I'm not going to give some groundbreaking analysis. I know that Trev has some things he wants to hit on. Without the Frankie and Duke, there is a very noticeable drop off, especially with I feel like the offense, even though Tyler Tanner is so awesome, it just gets a bit less fluid. And I feel like that's the byproduct of not having more than one reliable ball handler on the court. It kind of gets a little bit one-dimensional at times where it's just someone sets a pick for Tyler Tanner and then he makes a play and kicks it out for somebody, or he's able to take it to the rack. And now that was good enough to beat Ole Miss because Tyler Tanner is probably a top 2 or 3 point guard in the SEC. But I feel like you started to see a little bit of a drop off from some of the usually reliable players. Like Tyler Nickel is the one who really stuck out to me as like, he's a guy who gets an open 3 and he knocks it down. And usually it happens 3 or 4 times a game. And he'll also knock down a couple contested ones. And they're just less open 3s for him. And there are less open lanes for AK or Devin to cut through. And that's a byproduct of, okay, they're honing in on Tyler Tanner as the only ball handler, and they're not really respecting anybody else in that front. So, I mean, there is a noticeable difference. That said, I feel like there is absolutely no reason to be down after a close victory against an SEC team, and then also a blowout victory against an SEC team in Kentucky without those two. So bye week is coming at a good time. Yes, there's a noticeable drop-off, as there would be with any team who's missing their second leading scorer and sixth man, who are also their secondary and third ball handlers. But it's not the end of the world, and Vanderbilt's done a good job kind of working through it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I will say, agree with Alex, no red flags. However, a more positive spin, okay, so let's go ahead and dispel this. Vanderbilt's going to get Duke Miles back. We know what was posted on the board this past week, I believe, regarding Duke Miles. That's just like not true. I don't know how else to say it. Duke Miles is still on the 2 to 3 week timetable. Everybody, and I don't know if we have any questions about this, everybody saw what Mark Byington had to say after Ole Miss regarding Frankie Collins. I have been told that the staff is shooting for Frankie to return this weekend against Oklahoma. But going back to like the question of red flags, I agree with Alex. I don't think it warrants a red flag. However, as we get deeper into SEC play in the month of February and as we get into March, no Duke Miles and no Frankie Collins has forced a lot of those 6th, 7th, and 8th guys to play more meaningful minutes. Chandler Bing, Jaden Leverett, Mike James. Tyler Harris is getting a lot of minutes, but Tyler Harris, I don't know if he's got the yips. I don't know what it is. He's just he can't hit the broadside of a barn. But those other 3 guys, more playing time, and they're giving you good minutes in meaningful SEC basketball games and close SEC basketball games like we saw against Ole Miss. I think that is really, really good for Vanderbilt moving forward, especially whenever you get in the tournament time, to where like you might have to unload the bench a little bit more. You've started to get this sense that your 6th, 7th, 8th guys can go out there, provide meaningful minutes, and you're just not stuck in mud. However, I do agree with Alex in terms of the half-court offense. Whenever Tyler Tanner is not out there, it does seem to sputter a little bit. I think even whenever you have a lineup of like AK and Tyler Nickel on the court at the same time, and Devin McLaughlin, if Tyler Tanner is not out there, I do agree it stipends things a little bit. I know I'm a Mike James truther, and I don't want to come off like I'm just saying this because I love Mike James. However, he's no Tyler Tanner and he's no Duke Miles. However, whenever Tyler Tanner is on the bench, I think Mike James has proved to be the best ball handler we're taking up court thus far. At least what we've seen so far.
Yeah, we'll see. The number one question I think looming in people's minds isn't the impact that I've harped on specifically of Vanderbilt being without their second and third primary ball handlers. I think if you know basketball, you know how much pressure that puts on Vanderbilt's offense. The question is the timeline of their return, because so many fans of sports have constantly been told when you're dealing with things that both of them are dealing with knee issues, that you're dealing with things with knees that are like, they'll be back in 2 to 3 weeks, and that turns into 3 to 4 weeks. That turns into 4 to 5 weeks. All of a sudden, we're in the SEC tournament. Neither of these guys are back. And we're hitting NCAA tournament time. Neither of these guys are back. So we don't have any inside information on this. So we heard Mark Byington say that Frankie Collins in the press conference is able to play.
Been medically cleared. Yes, he's been medically cleared
to play, which is different than ready to play, but medically cleared to play.
Mm-hmm.
You know what the timeline is, or at least what they've said the timeline is surrounding Duke Miles. Mason Nicholson, you heard the comments from Mark Byington. Seems like we're not going to see any Mason Nicholson.
Call it what it is. Mason Nicholson quit on this basketball team.
Yes, is what it is. We talked about that last episode. So
I wanted to say good on you for you were like, I'm reading the tea leaves. Turn out you reading the tea leaves was 100% correct.
Just watch a lot of basketball and see a lot of scenarios play out, and then occasionally a broken clock is right twice a day. But so how do you think, and this might be a message board question, I'm not sure. Do you think this team will be full strength come SEC tournament time? if you had to put money on it? Or what is the percentage chance? Not with Mason Nicholson, obviously, but Frankie.
But with Frankie and Duke, I'm pretty confident in what. And Alex, if feel free to speak about what you've heard. In terms of Duke Miles, I'm pretty confident in the prognosis and the timeline. Frankie, excuse me. Frankie Collins is interesting. From what I've been told and sort of going off reading the tea leaves like you did, I think I'll say this. If you do not see Frankie Collins this Saturday against Oklahoma, I don't think you'll see him at all. He won't play this season again.
Interesting.
That's just a hunch. So yeah, if Frankie Collins does not play this Saturday, I do not think he will suit up the rest of the season.
That's interesting. How I would read it differently is Frankie has already played 9 games this season. So that's where it's a little different than Mason in my eyes. But also, I don't disagree with you.
Well, in terms of the medically cleared, my understanding is, correct me if I'm wrong, either one of you, Mark Byington was very explicit in that he's been medically cleared. Once you have been medically cleared, even if you do not play the rest of the season, I do not believe you can get a medical red shirt.
I was about to say that.
Okay, so is that correct? That was my understanding of
That's my understanding as well, is that Mark Byington putting it out there that he is medically cleared, and I'm assuming that they have paperwork to back that up. Mm-hmm. I hesitate to really make an assertion that he's taking a stand against his player who's wanting to get a medical red shirt, et cetera, et cetera. But that, from my understanding, that effectively eliminates his ability to do so. Yeah. And it kind of draws a hard line in the sand of this is you're playing or you're done with your college career, man. How it read to me in a way.
Well, there's different parts of it, and it has to be, so college basketball, the rule is 30% of games played, less than 30%. So that's right at 9 or 10 games in a season. So that's right where Frankie is. Also, it has to be a season-ending injury or illness certified. So that can be, of course, tweaked to get the right doctor to say it was season-ending, which is where I think Mason Nicholson's is, where it's an illness that was season-ending. Frankie's is a little more complicated, and I think he might struggle more to receive that medical red shirt for the exact reasons you're saying. So, Trevor, I kind of like that. I could see I would draw the hard line in the sand at the Auburn game, so that Tuesday game.
Interesting.
Give him a little extra time, but if you don't see him before we record next episode, I'm kind of sitting where you are. And I would honestly, percentage-wise, I don't know if you put a percentage on it. I would say I didn't 65% sure that Vanderbilt will be full strength by the SEC tournament, and most of that is not injury preventative. It's for the exact reason.
And are you defining full strength as both Duke and Frankie?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Then I would probably put it this: Duke's going to be back for tournament time. Probably even SEC tournament. I have a weird feeling about Frankie.
That's why I'm doing bad math in my head, but I'm 95% sure, 98% sure Duke Miles is going to be back. I'm more 50% on Frankie.
Frankie feels like a coin flip.
Yeah, that's how it feels to me. Alex, do you have a percentage you want to throw out?
When is the SEC tournament? I mean, that's not till mid-March, right?
Right. I believe it's the second week of March because the final basketball game
March
is March
11th
7th.
through 15th.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel extremely confident that Duke Miles will be back a couple weeks before that tournament. And he'll probably be rounding into good game shape come SEC tournament time, which will be great for the team. Frankie, I haven't had any concrete statement from somebody on staff or even somebody who just tends to be in the know that Frankie is fighting for a medical red shirt. I am in the dark about the Frankie Collins situation. Hands up. I truly don't know, but the vibes around there are just so weird after that response. And there have been enough people who kind of been this is just an odd situation overall, that my confidence is much, much lower than with Duke Miles. I don't have a number, but it's lower.
I also want to preface, we are not saying as of this point that we believe Frankie Collins is pulling a Mason Nicholson at this point. I've seen a lot of conjecture both on the message board and on Twitter that it's like, oh, he's quit on the team. And I am not to that point from anything I've heard to make that assertion. So I also want to withhold judgment on Frankie, because it's like you said, like with basketball, like it was a partial meniscus tear. Like, that's tough. But like Byington said, he's medically cleared. Everything I've heard about Frankie Collins is that he's a great teammate. He's still been incredibly involved and just a good person. So I'm not willing to make that assertion on his character yet.
Yeah.
So that's on the injury front. Coming up for Vanderbilt basketball before we record the next episode is a home matchup against Oklahoma this Saturday. Of course, Vanderbilt is on a bye during this week, so they don't play Tuesday or Wednesday. They play Oklahoma on February the 7th at 2:30 p.m. on SEC Network. And then on Tuesday evening, so we'll be recording episode 353 on Wednesday night next week, they play Auburn at 6 p.m. on SEC Network. Auburn was just in the top 25 recently, or am I mistaken?
I don't believe so.
Okay, Auburn is currently number 26 in KenPom. Oklahoma is currently number 66 in KenPom. Neither of these teams have incredibly impressive resumes by any stretch of the imagination. Oklahoma currently sitting at the bottom of the SEC, 1-8 in conference play, 11-11 overall, while Auburn is currently 5-4 in conference play, 14-8 overall. So 2 games that Vanderbilt should be favored in. We'll see if they're able to come out with a victory, missing, of course, as we just talked about in great detail, Frankie Collins and Duke Miles. Trevor, you're going to be doing your beloved deep analytics dives and previews for those, or just the Saturday matchup?
I'll be doing that for both. Also, I'll make a note, just not going too much on Oklahoma. On my last video with Ole Miss, I said that I expected Vanderbilt to basically handle Ole Miss. I don't walk that back. If you were looking at like the numbers, then like I think most people would be like, yeah, this is clearly a much better Vanderbilt team. However, it's sports and the game is not played on paper. So I say that because I want to let you guys know I'm also probably going to make a similar prediction, even though it's on the road for this Oklahoma game. I think
Oklahoma's at home.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, did I say at home?
You said on the road.
Okay, my apologies. Yeah, Oklahoma is at Memorial. I think the Vanderbilt should handle them, even without Duke Miles and Frankie Collins, if Frankie does not go out there.
But the games aren't played on paper.
Yeah, the games are not played on paper.
But the paper leads us oftentimes to the correct answer. But that is it for basketball. We are going to head to the TDR cocktail break before segment 2, where we are going to have Alex preview the 2026 VandyBoys season. So everybody out there, grab yourself a delicious hot or cold beverage, and we will be back right after the TDR cocktail break. Welcome back from the TDR cocktail break, and welcome back into episode 352. Let's get straight into it. We have the 2026 Vanderbilt baseball preview to get into, and we have our very own Vanderbilt baseball expert, Alex Kurbegov, joined here to preview the upcoming season. I will also add we have another baseball expert that we have added on to the TDR staff here, and that is Colin Bryant. So check out thedoreport.com to check out some of Colin's work. Did an incredible job already previewing some baseball and some baseball articles that will continue to go on as baseball season quickly approaches. Like I already said earlier in the episode, baseball season is quickly approaching, sneaking up on us, might be the better term. Vanderbilt opens up the season on the 13th of February, a Friday, against TCU in the Shriners Children's College Showdown in Arlington, Texas. Vanderbilt then goes on to take on Texas Tech on the 14th at 11 a.m. and Oklahoma State on the 15th at 10:30 a.m. But let's rewind a little bit back to Vanderbilt last season. A complicated season, to sum up in a few sentences, I would say. Would you call it a complicated season? I don't know. Maybe Trevor made a face there. But
people think I'm Vandy baseball's number one op. And I want, as we get in baseball season, I once again want to reiterate, I love Vandy baseball more than all of you. Like, that's something I'll be willing to stand on. So whenever you hear my critiques, just remember I've watched more Vanderbilt baseball and I've been to more Vanderbilt baseball games over my lifetime than you have.
True. But I think it is a complicated season to evaluate.
Yes.
Maybe simple in what the issues were that ultimately led to the season ending, but complicated in how this team performed throughout the season. Vanderbilt ended last year 43-18 overall, 19-11 in conference play, was the number one overall seed in the NCAA tournament, hosting a regional, of course, won the SEC tournament champions, but bounced from the regional as the number one overall seed in the tournament. I mean, that's it. That's why it's such a complicated season. You were the number one overall seed and did not perform in postseason play. The last time Vanderbilt made it to Omaha to the College World Series was 2021. That timeline quickly ticking. That's 4 years since making it to Omaha. 4 years.
And guys, please, whenever we get into baseball season, please don't freaking bring up, oh, they should have gone to the College World Series if it wasn't for COVID. Well, they didn't.
They went in 2021.
But they went in 2021. And quite frankly, like, I'm actually not even going to go on that tangent. I'm sorry. People use 2020 like, oh, 2021. It's like, okay, yeah, also NC State had to forfeit in Omaha. Like, let's not forget this.
Trevor's already starting off on his tangents. You're really pissing off the Vandy baseball fans here already. But the reason I say that, Vanderbilt had clear issues throughout the season, and I would say number one is consistent batting and power. And I'm not the baseball guy here. These are the baseball guys of TDR, but consistent power was a problem. And then playing away from Hawkins Field was a problem as well. Vanderbilt was 10-9 last season, playing away from the friendly confines of the Hawk. However, they got eliminated in postseason play at the Hawk. So, kind of a problem, kind of not, but power was a major problem, and just batting production in general. So we're going to swing it to Alex here. Alex is going to break down, to start out, if he's able to, what Vanderbilt lost last season and what they're bringing in on this roster. So, Alex, take it away. Preview this Vanderbilt roster for the people out there.
Yeah, so we're going to briefly go over who they lost. I do not know where all of these players landed. There's a lot of people. But the biggest losses come in the form of Riley Nelson was probably the biggest, because he was viewed as a guy who could potentially return. He was also Vanderbilt's best offensive player last year, and a truly elite first baseman defensively. I think he might have been my favorite Vandy boy of all time, just like within 1 year, or like of my short span watching the Vandy boys. I loved him. But he went to the draft of the Cleveland Guardians. RJ Austin, who had all the tools to be elite, but sucked in SEC play last year. Call a spade a spade. He was drafted in the third round by the Orioles. Jonathan Vastine. He's somewhere in California right now. I can't remember which team drafted him in like the 18th round or something like that. But he was a mainstay at shortstop for the past couple of years, ended up getting drafted late. Then I believe both Jacob Humphreys and JD Rogers, they were out of eligibility. I know that Humphrey signed with someone. I don't know about Rogers, though. Pitching-wise, JD Thompson and Sawyer Hawks are by far the biggest losses. Thompson was the Friday starter for Vandy, and he wasn't Kumar Rock or Jack Leiter, but he was still really damn good, pretty consistent. throughout the year, especially in as offensive of an era as we're in right now. Sawyer Hawks was probably the best pitcher on the roster last year, had an ERA just above 1. He didn't start, but he pitched about as much as anybody else out of the bullpen, came in a number of situations. He was just awesome to watch, totally reinvented himself. Then the slightly less used Levi Huseman and Tommy O'Rourke also left because Huseman was drafted. O'Rourke was out of – actually, no, he did have one more year, but he elected to sign because this was already his 6th year last year. In the transfer portal, Vanderbilt lost Mac Rose. Not a loss. Let me just say that. I cannot thank goodness Vanderbilt upgraded at backup catcher.
Maybe one of the worst defensive catchers I've ever seen in Vanderbilt. And that was with Jag Bolger.
I had to censor myself so many times on Twitter and on the boards when talking about the play of Mac Rose. By all accounts, an amazing human being, and just a solid guy. Not an SEC caliber baseball player. Just say that much. David Mendez was another position player. He was the other transfer from Dayton with Jason King. Came in thinking he could contend for an outfield spot. Just wasn't good. Then RJ Hamilton, he was used as a pinch runner. He ended up at Duke, so good for him, but I don't think it's a major loss. The two guys in the transfer portal who you could view as big losses were Ethan McIlvain and Jaden Davis. McIlvain went to Arkansas. Davis went to Penn State.
And by the way, McIlvain's sporting an incredible handlebar mustache.
I saw that.
I don't know if you saw the latest look. I mean, that's a huge loss. I mean, irreplaceable with that mustache.
Hey, there's a downside to Tim Corbin doing the whole no facial hair during the season rule.
All right, Mr. Steinbrenner.
Mm-hmm. And he's a Red Sox guy.
And they got rid of it too.
And he's
the
a Red
Yankees got
Sox
rid of
guy.
it.
I was actually wondering once the Yankees got rid of it if Corbin would go back on that. I mean, and I guess I don't know if he's allowing it this season, but just in the past. But McIlvain's a dude with all the stuff in the world, but he just couldn't throw strikes last year. And when he did throw a strike, it was a meatball down the middle. Jaden Davis, when you have no power but a good hit tool, but you're only batting about 200, you're not going to get on the field. It's probably the worst infield defender I'd seen in my 5 years of really watching Vanderbilt baseball. So can't say I'm shocked to see him go. Anyway, to sum that all up, there were definitely some big losses, especially with Nelson, Thompson, and Hawks. But in all honesty, Rose, Austin, Vastine, Humphrey, Rogers, Mendez, McIlvain, Davis, and Hamilton were all below average last year. So, yeah.
So now, Alex, now that we've talked about the bleeding from Vanderbilt's roster, but that's just expected across all sports in college now. What did Vanderbilt bring in now that you've kind of laid out the losses? Because that sounds like a lot. However, you did correctly kind of say that most of it's not the worst to see some of those names exit. So who did Vanderbilt replace those guys with?
Yeah, so they turned out, it was, I feel like people had really, really high expectations because this was the first year where you kind of came in saying Vandy is like really playing the portal game. And then also just, they did have several truly elite high schoolers signed who you thought they could get maybe one or two through the draft, and they ended up not doing so. So there was some disappointment, but I actually think that I'm really, at least comparative to the narrative I see online, I'm pretty high on who they brought in. For transfers, I'm going to go by position players first. They brought in Logan and Carter Johnstone. They're, in terms of their offensive game, they're fairly similar profiles. I believe that both are left-handed bats. I know that Logan is for sure. Yes, they both bat left-handed. So they're lefties. Logan has a little bit more power, but both can drive the ball for sure. They are both guys who work up pitch counts. They take good at bats, good hit tools. Logan is a corner outfielder. He can play center field too, but I'd say he's a average center field, but above average in the corner outfield spot defensively. Carter is an infielder by trade. I'll have a little bit more on his defense. It's not bad, but it's also it's unremarkable, which projects to be a little bit of a roadblock in terms of him getting on the field consistently. That said, both of them are really, really high floor offensive guys, and I've heard some good things about Logan Johnstone in particular taking a big offensive step this year. Next is Mac Whitcomb. He was the OVC Player of the Year as the starting catcher for Tennessee Tech. He actually led the entire country in WAR for catchers last year. I saw that on Twitter yesterday or today. I think he hit 16 homers and 360 as a sophomore last year. So insanely good numbers at the OVC level. The defense is solid, not great. It's a step up from Mac Rose, but Colin Barzy is still the best defensive center on the roster. He looked okay in fall ball, if not spectacular, but that's also kind of to be expected when you're making such a big jump up. I'll get a little bit more detailed into these guys when I put out a projected starting lineup at the end. Then there's Max Jensen. He came in from Cornell. He's viewed as a corner infielder. He has some power, even if his stats from Cornell didn't really reflect it. He's one of those guys who was he batted for average over power for the first 3 years of his career. Then he went to Driveline, and he was having a major power surge in his final season before, I believe it was a season-ending ACL injury hit him. And he was recovering from that over the fall, so I haven't gotten to see him play at all, but I've heard good things. And then Cade Sears was a transfer in from a community college. I can't remember which one. I'll be honest with you guys, if Cade Sears is taking at bats, it's not a good thing. He projects as a defensive sub or pinch runner to me. Mm-hmm. There's also the only notable freshman position player is Colin Brightwell. He was a late pickup in the freshman class as a summer guy, decommitted from Oklahoma, flipped to Vandy. He is not strong at all. Like, I would be shocked to hear that he has hit more than 3 home runs on a legit baseball field in his life. His arms look like noodles. That said, he is Enrique Bradfield levels of fast, and he has a good hit tool too. So he got a lot of reps in fall ball, and I've heard the staff is really high on him. Maybe not this year, but for the next couple of years. And I think that he could absolutely be used as a pinch runner or defensive sub. Moving on to the pitchers, it is a very freshman-heavy group that they brought in to replace the pitchers who departed, although it's not a one-for-one type of replacement thing. The 2 transfers were Nate Taylor and Jacob Faulkner. Nate Taylor is a guy, he came in from Georgia, pitched about 8 innings for them and was really good in the 8 innings he saw, but just didn't get on the field much. Went to the Cape and was one of the better starting pitchers there over this last summer. Did really well there before leaving to come to Vanderbilt and trained at Vandy for the rest of the summer. Jacob Faulkner is kind of the opposite mold of Taylor, who has really, really good stuff and a lot of untapped potential. Faulkner is like a weird sidewinder guy who came from Princeton. He was an all Ivy League reliever and then closer in his final few years there. Won't throw the ball hard, but super weird release, get some good movement on the ball, good veteran presence to have out of the bullpen who won't get intimidated by a big moment. And then the 3 freshman pitchers I want to hit on are First is Aiden Stillman, who was kind of the gem of the recruiting class that they got to college. He flipped from Virginia late in the process as well. A lot of experience pitching. He was a Team USA guy coming out of high school, viewed as one of, if not the most college-ready arm of all the freshmen who got on campus. He got injured in the fall, did not pitch, actually hadn't pitched even up till a couple of weeks ago. So we'll see if he's able to jump right in and assert himself, or if there's going to be a bigger ramp up until he really gets into the lineup. But the other two are Tyler Baird and Wyatt Nato. Neither of those are the biggest names, but I think that both are going to be big contributors this year. And don't take my word for it. Take Tim Corbin's, who in his quotes quite literally said for both of them that they are going to be big contributors this year. Tyler Baird's an interesting case in that he was a guy who, when those, like the first Baseball America rankings for the class of 2025 would come out, he was like a consensus top 10, top 20 guy who everyone was thinking this is a future first rounder. No chance he makes it to college, etc. I don't know his story in high school. I had heard that there was an injury thing there, but I didn't find record of him being injured and missing a ton of games. I know he played his whole senior season, but he ended up kind of falling down the draft boards and didn't really get that much of a look at the draft. But I've heard that he's come onto campus and really, really impressed. He's a true 4-pitch guy, mid-90s fastball. I mean, about as much potential as you could want in a freshman pitcher. Same can be said for Wyatt Nato, like sky-high potential. He's a guy who was pumping 101 in the fall when they aren't fully warmed up yet. I watched him in one of the fall games against, I think it was Murray State or somebody. He has a crazy arm. I'd say that my comp right now for him is Grayson Carter. Control issues, but he also has 3 pitches that he can throw for strikes, and I've heard that the staff is really high on him. So those are the newcomers that they brought in. At least there are several freshmen that I didn't hit on, but those are the guys who I think are going to make a big difference this year.
So that's out. That's players in. Now a tough question. I already said that Vanderbilt has not been to Omaha since 2021. Maybe you don't have to project out that far necessarily. What are your expectations for this season? I would ask better or worse than last year, but last year's a tough one to gauge because it's impossible to be better than the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament. Literally impossible. It's impossible to do better in the SEC postseason, at least, than winning the SEC tournament, but it's certainly possible to do better than being bounced from your own region. So what are your current expectations for this Vanderbilt roster? Do you think better, worse? Where do you see them ending up? Is this a team that Vanderbilt fans should be expecting to see in Omaha? Is this a team that should be pleased with the super regional? What are you seeing?
It's a really tough question to answer, in all honesty. I think that the answer to that can be found less with the newcomers and more in terms of the returning talent. I feel like a lot of those newcomers that they brought in, they're solid players, but not really the superstar transfers that you might see some of the other programs like Tennessee or Georgia really relying on to get to Omaha or wherever. My best answer to that question is that I don't know if this team is better or worse. It is different, though. I think that last year, I'm going to pat myself on the back here. I said that the team last year was a high variance kind of team where the ceiling was really high, but the floor is also really low, in that you needed big performances from a few guys who, funny enough, it was really RJ Austin I was talking about, and he ended up kind of sucking, and Jonathan Vastine too. But I didn't expect Riley Nelson to really step up how he did. But anyway, I was saying that you really, really needed big performances and big development from the returners. And that if they all hit their ceiling, this team absolutely had the potential to be great and be an Omaha team last year. But they could also flame out. And that's exactly what it was. It was a roller coaster for the entire season. This team is different in that I think that the floor is much higher, but that the ceiling, I won't say that the ceiling is lower, but I'd just say it's a higher floor. I'd say it's a higher floor. I would be a little bit surprised if they get bounced in a regional like they did last year. I feel like you lost guys like Mac Rose, Jacob Humphrey, JD Rogers, Vastine, and Austin, who all were very hot and cold players. And you replace them with the Johnstone brothers, Jensen and Mac Whitcomb, who they might not be world beaters, but they are consistent.
Mhm.
And I feel like you're going to get less of those like RJ Austin 1 for 40 type streaks, or Jonathan Vastine 0 for 5 with 5 of the ugliest strikeouts you've ever seen type of nights. These guys, they might not give you a 5 for 5 night with 2 home runs, but they'll give you a solid 2 for 5, 1 for 4 with a walk type of thing, a lot more consistently than the teams that, or the players that you lost. I also do want to hit on the fact that Riker Waite is a big X factor for me. He's not a newcomer, but he did not play much last year, and he, spoiler, is my projected starting shortstop, and I think could be a top of the lineup type of bat if he continues to perform at the level that he did in the Cape and things like that. So it's dependent upon some development from guys. The Brody Johnston can't bat 211 in SEC play again. Rustin Rigdon has to do better than 237. But yeah, I would say it's a higher floor, and I won't say it's a lower ceiling, but yeah, I'd say that I feel more confident about there being an escape from a regional this year. We finally break the regional curse than I was last year, but I don't feel any more confident about 100% getting to Omaha than I did last year.
That makes complete sense.
Alex, I got a question for you, but I actually think somebody on the message board asked a topic or asked a question in like a similar vein, but I have a specific question for you once we get to one of these message board questions.
Perfect. Okay. So if it's not hit on the message board, make sure to bring it up.
I looked at it before and I was like, I think we could discuss this because I think there's it's not on Alex. There's a lot of new things in flux. Very important piece of this VandyBoys team that I don't think we've discussed that I think also could be the X factor. Somebody who's not actually on the diamond.
Yes, I know. Yeah,
on the same wavelength.
A lot of beef in episode 352 after a couple non-beefy episodes. We got the beef on this one because now we have premium message board questions. I'm going to refresh and make sure that we do not miss any. All right, we have a lot to get to. Wait, what do you think the number is?
Of questions?
It's not that bad. We'll get through it fine. Okay. All right, these are going to be a mix of of basketball and baseball. So buckle up, Alex. Get ready to stretch that brain. All right, first up from Unabridged. Oh, wait. It's about you, Alex. This is before we announced that Alex is going to be joining. It says, I'm sure you'll wait for an episode with Alex to dive further. But what is y'all's expectations for baseball this year? Alex just hit on that. Player to watch, breakout star. So, Alex, you can come up with a breakout star and/or player to watch.
I'll give one pitcher and one position player. Breakout star, I am going to say Rustin Rigdon for the position players. He added a lot of weight, strength. Well, I won't say a lot, but gained like 10 pounds of actual muscle, and hopefully he's actually holding it this year, unlike last. At least he appears to be. And I've heard that bat to ball skills continue to develop, and now he's really driving to the gaps. Tim Corbin went so far as to say literally in his quote that he's going to be a focal point of the offense, which I've never heard him explicitly say before about a player. So that gives me a lot of confidence in Rigdon being a breakout star. And then pitching, you could say that he was already a star last year, although some poor late performances might have dampened that opinion. But Austin Nye, I mean, that dude, I watched him in the fall. He's got first rounder painted all over him. His velo is up. He has 4 true pitches. The dude is businesslike on the mound, doesn't get rattled. He looked like a different class of pitcher on an already good and deep roster, at least through the fall. And I've heard that that's continued to be the case here. And then player to watch, I'm going to say Riker Waite again. Riker Waite, he's the unknown X factor of he hasn't gone against SEC competition, but to this point, he has looked really, really good in practice, on the Cape, and in scrimmages.
All right. Now time to shift gears a little bit.
All
It's a
right.
basketball question. This is the rapid fire world we live in with premium message board questions. Bex for VU. What have been your best experiences inside Memorial Gym? Just for what it's worth, my top games in chronological order. January 2nd, 1980. Vanderbilt 77, number 4, LSU 66. My second game ever and first game I remember being really into. Memorial Magic is real. Then goes on January 15th, 1986, Vanderbilt 60, Tennessee 59. Tennessee held a 59-51 lead with just 57 seconds remaining. Student section row 4 with my older brother. Barry Goheen practically won that game on his own. Wednesday, January 13th, 1993, number 25 Vanderbilt 101, number 1 Kentucky 86. Best student section I've been a part of, row 18, I think. About as perfect a game that can be played. And then finally, Tuesday, February 26th, 2008, Vanderbilt 72, number 1 Tennessee 69. Whiteout game with almost no orange in the building, 2L, row 9. I wish I had that memory. I will say one that I want to use, and then you guys can bring up your favorites. Maybe not. This is probably maybe my individually favorite because I don't have my memory is horrible. Like if you go pre-high school, my memory is horrible. However, there was an NIT game and a buzzer-beating layup that is shown consistently on the Memorial Magic hype-up reel of Corey Smith hitting on a full court pass, a buzzer-beating layup. I don't remember who they were playing, but I know it was 2005 to advance in the NIT of a game winner. I was sitting in like the first row of, I can't remember if it was F or L, but one of the sections behind the bench. And I had my hands raised and I was actually in the back of an image in the Tennessean on the paper for that game. So that's probably my favorite individual memory. I was also in the building on the Ezra, I almost just said Ezra Chris Magnon. Like the
poster.
Yeah. I was also there for the Ezra buzzer beater against Auburn. That was a pretty awesome one as well. But I'm going to go with the 2005 NIT one on the Corey Smith full court pass. And I think Mario Moore was on that roster. Had like 30 points.
Ted Scoochis.
Yeah, that was a hell of a team. So I'm going back to 2005 for mine in an NIT game of all things.
Well, it's funny you say 2005. One of mine is also 2005. My very first ever Vanderbilt basketball game, 2005, Vanderbilt against Alabama A&M. I got to see, I first ever basketball game. Ted Scoochis went up for a block and wedgied it, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. So that was my first ever Vanderbilt basketball game. I'll always cherish that one. 2005 against Alabama A&M. 2012. Jeffrey Taylor, Festus Ezeli, Brad Tinsley, Lance Goldburn senior night against top 10 Florida. They wore gold jerseys. John Jenkins, as he was taking his final, not John Jenkins, Jeff Taylor, as he was taking his final ovation, started crying and was hugging John Jenkins. That was a great one. And last year's Tennessee game.
I feel like such a fraud when I talk to like you guys or old Vandy fans, because they're like, oh, I remember the winter of '69 when I traveled to the snow to see Vanderbilt beat number 1 Tennessee.
And I'm just like, I really enjoyed Tyron Lawrence's buzzer beater.
That's a great
That's
one.
a great
But
one.
no, sincerely, that's my first that was my first real Memorial Magic type of setting. Then that was my first ever court or field storm. Or I take that back. The Florida game earlier that year, the Florida football game, that was my first field storm.
Yeah.
What a field storm
Yeah, what
that
a
was.
field storm. I was at that game, didn't even know we stormed the field.
That's probably my first memory. And I feel like that's what really, I do hold that in very high regard because I was there with a lot of my friends. And like after that moment, it was, we loved to go to every basketball game except for Jerry Stackhouse's last year. And it was just awesome. And then, yeah, I'd say the Kentucky and Tennessee games last year where I was a senior. We had just been coming off of one of the worst seasons in Vanderbilt history. And I thought that there was no chance we would have a really good basketball team. And yet we upset both Tennessee and Kentucky within 1 week, stormed the court twice. Whole campus was just on fire. And that was really awesome.
There's nothing wrong with the Tyron Lawrence buzzer beater.
We got
either.
that photo right
Yeah,
there.
that photo
we have a
is
photo
up
of it
in the
right
living
there.
room. I also will never forget I was living in a different place with different roommates. I was watching that in my living room, actually. And when Tyron hit that, I remember I had like finished concrete floors, like this new aesthetic, cool look, whatever. And it sucked, actually. But I remember like running back and forth alone because I wasn't living with anybody like Trevor. Just back and forth. You'd be like, oh, shit. So that's a great one because it was so that was awesome.
I watched that game with my dad, with my mom and my dad.
All right, next up, world's strongest Vandy fan. To build off last week's Ogilvy jersey conversation, rank the non-NIL unofficial jerseys that every kid seemed to have during the early 2010s.
Oh,
You know, when the bookstore would have jerseys with no names on them, just happened to coincide with some of the most popular players' numbers. 25 Jamie Graham, 4 AJ Ogilvy, 10 Earl Bennett / Larry Smith. I would say also the number 6 unofficial Cutler jerseys did some numbers. I had a number 17 DJ Moore jersey.
We're forgetting
actually.
a big one. They had a white number 13 Chris Marv. I rocked the hell out of that Chris Marv. I also had a gold Jeff Taylor. Saw a lot of white John Jenkins jerseys back then.
World's strongest Vandy fan goes on to say my takeaways from the Ole Miss game. Number 1, crowd was great. Number 2, refs were awful. Number 3, shout placement was 2 out of 10. Got to get the boys rolling into shout. Dropping it randomly under 8 in the first half during a timeout was a big miss. Shout hasn't caught on the same way in basketball yet that it had in football, I will say. But they will get it there eventually. It's an incredible thing that they've started in football. They'll get it there. They'll get basketball fans used to it. I promise. The student section, they're on it. I was at the Kentucky game. They figured it out.
The issue with basketball is that it's a weird dichotomy as opposed to football in terms of like the demographics. You have the young students who get rowdy. You have the folks within our age range, give or take 10 to 15 years. But then in the Bell Mead section, you just have the bluest of hairs. Vanderbilt could come back from 15 down on like a 16, like an 18-2 run, and they like wouldn't get off their ass.
Yeah, and then the last part of World's Strongest Vandy Fans question was, when is the baseball preview episode? This episode, so he'll be happy to know that. Next up from poor Vandy fan 615, and playing off the previous comment / question about Memorial, how can we make them get rid of the lame cookie giveaway? The kids dunking on the Nerf net and that sort of stupid stuff during timeouts of highly competitive conference basketball games. I don't even really like the anchor down chants, and that stuff takes the crowd right out of it. Surely the media / marketing staff can come up with something better, like shout when timely placed. I'd rather hear the pep band or loud music played to hype up a crazy Vandy crowd. What would you guys recommend? Number 1, the anchor down thing sucks. Stop
horrible.
that. Black gold. Black gold. That's what it has been for years. Stop trying to make anchor down a chant. I don't know who in the marketing staff suggested that. They clearly were not Vanderbilt fans. I'm not dissing them, whatever. It's just you haven't been around it long enough. You got hired for a job and you came up with, it's 2 words. It's anchor down. We're going to get – no.
It's black gold.
Black gold. Black gold would get the crowd 10 times more into it. The cookie giveaways, annoying. It's just like the stuff I rant about with the football in game. Is like you're trying to do more, and I appreciate that you're trying to do more, but sometimes less is more.
Yeah.
And in certain instances, that really takes the energy out of the building.
Yeah.
And out of the arena, just like it does in football. So
Here's the thing. TDR is for the kids. However, I hate nothing more than watching those 5 and 6 year olds dunk. I'm okay with Tiff's treats. I'm okay with like the emoji cam. Hell, whatever else, an untimely play shout, whatever. Please stop with the 5 and 6 year olds dunking. I'm so sick of it. I don't want to see that.
It's just, it's funny how it's kind of like in football. So I went to Bryant-Denny for the first time this last season. I'd never been. They don't do a lot of the things that Vanderbilt football does in between. And their game day experience is still way better. I went to Kentucky football. They did a lot of the same things that Vanderbilt does and had a horrible, like Kentucky football was the worst game day experience I've ever experienced.
Yep,
like it was,
I agree.
It was horrible. Their speaker system was like Vanderbilt from 15 years ago. All their replays were terrible. Their announcer was terrible, all of it, except for their waiting time on concessions. Kentucky's got that figured out. Great concourses. But with basketball, the same way, it's like just let the energy of the event do the work. I understand you have sponsors like Tiff Streets, but like with the kids dunking, who is that for? What is that for?
I don't want to see a 6-year-old try a 360 tomahawk dunk and miss.
Whatever.
I don't want to.
People have jobs in marketing and the game day experience, and they try to come up with things, and sometimes it's like, man, less is more. And maybe that's just. But moving on to the next question from poor Vandy fan 615. Alex, you'll be able to answer this one. This was an article written by Colin Bryan, actually. Who's on first for real? So I don't know if you have an answer. Who's playing first base for the Commodores this year for the VandyBoys?
So I actually responded later in the thread, and I was like, spoiler, I don't have an answer. I don't know if y'all want me to get into my lineup projection right here, or if I should just wait till after the questions because I don't want to gyp someone.
Wait till after.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that if I were a betting man, I would say Max Jensen. I also am not sure about if he had a full offseason to be with Vandy. I think he'd be a shoo-in, but he's only been healthy for a couple of months, and that makes me nervous. So I think that Max Jensen will probably start at first because he has experience there and he's a solid first baseman. If it's not Jensen, I could see Carter Johnstone or maybe even Chris Maldonado getting slotted in there. I know that Carter isn't bad at any infield position. He's just unremarkable at all of them, and he's in an unfortunate situation wherein Brody Johnston is the best third baseman in the SEC. Riker Waite, I've heard that he can come in and be a top 3 defensive shortstop in the SEC. I don't know if that's true. I haven't seen him play much on the defensive end, but I've heard nothing but outstanding things about his defense. And then you got either Mancini, who's a solid second baseman, or Rigdon, who's an amazing second baseman. And then Jensen's a good first baseman. So those are all above average infield defenders. And Johnstone is just average at all positions, except for maybe third base where he's slightly above average, but he's not unseating Brody. So I think that they might just be trying to find a place for him on the field and he could be first base. That's my answer. I think it's Max Jensen, but there is the off chance that it could be Carter.
Next up from Vandy Fan 95, and you're only allowed one word on this, Alex. Simply put, will baseball be better or worse than last season?
Oh, is that my word? Is my word
Close. Playing with fire.
Gun to my head, I'll say better.
Better. Okay. It also depends on how you define better. as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Next up from Vandy Savage. There's 3 questions in here. Number 1, what does the men's basketball team look like without Frankie Collins and Duke Miles in the tournament? First round exit. I would say hopefully we don't have to find out with both of them out. But I would say, yeah, it depends on where they end up seated. But it really depends on the matchup, to be honest. But this team, in my opinion, is not making it out of the round of 32 without Duke Miles and or Frankie Collins at least. They have to have one of those 2. Next up, can the women's team really contend for an SEC title drilled by 25 plus by South Carolina? Alex?
No, they can't contend. And that's not disrespectful to them. I want to preface this with this is not meant in a disrespectful way. But you have Texas and South Carolina in your way. And I think Vandy is a top 4 or 5 team in the SEC. They're right up there with LSU, Ole Miss, Oklahoma. But there is an upper echelon. There is 1A South Carolina, 1B Texas. They're in that second tier. And we've gotten into it. You guys even hit on it a little bit in the last pod, or maybe it was the one before that. It was after the South Carolina loss. But, like, there is a gap the size of the Grand Canyon between South Carolina, UConn, and the third best team. And then there's another gap, maybe not the Grand Canyon, but there's another sizable gap between that top 4 and the rest of the teams. And even like they are, again, they're an Elite 8 team. That's their potential in my mind. They are nowhere close to contending for an SEC title.
Yeah. And last but not least, on the football front, Pavia. Fairly positive reports from the Senior Bowl, some mixed reactions. Todd McShay, almost certainly an undrafted free agent. Any chance he plays a down in the NFL, CFL? I would say it's on the fence whether he's an undrafted free agent or a really late round pick. If I had to bet, I would say undrafted free agent. Now, playing it down in the NFL, he's not going to be a starter anywhere. It's going to depend on if a team falls in love with his personality, his mentality, and what he possibly brings to a locker room and allows him to play in that backup role. If I had to bet, I don't think he's ever going to actually play a meaningful down in the NFL. But I don't want to doubt the guy. Where would you guys sit on if he's ever going to actually play it down?
That's about how I feel. Yeah.
My projection is that he manages to hang around the NFL just long enough that he gets like a Ben DiNucci or whoever that Italian dude who played for the New York Giants.
Ben DiNucci.
Tommy, whatever.
Tommy, yeah, whatever his last name is.
DeVito.
He gets like, yes. He gets like one of those type of things where it's like he just gets in there for one game because somehow your starting quarterback got injured and you were dumb enough to trade away your backup earlier in the year. And then Diego Pavia comes in like week 15 for a team that's tanking. And it gets a bunch of ticket sales and media attention and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I could see that.
That's a very oddly specific prediction. But I don't know why. I just feel in my heart that that'll happen. But do I think that he will start a meaningful game? No.
Yeah, that's kind of exactly how I'm feeling as well. Is he's going to have the name recognition, a team in that exact situation. He could sign with a practice squad, for example, and that situation happens or something like that. But yeah, I mean, no team is going to go into a season, especially next season, with the plan being Diego Pavia is going to compete for the starting quarterback job. That's just not going to happen. Next up from Ezra Chris Magnon, the guy that almost made me have a real slip up earlier. Let's get overzealous and start thinking about basketball roster construction next year. Wow. By my count, the guys who have eligibility to return are juniors James and Harris, sophomores Tanner and Kimball, and freshmen Bing, Leverett, and Deans Vines. Who stays, who leaves, and for what reasons? For those who stay, what role do they play? I would say number one, he's not including Nicholson. Nicholson's obviously gone. I'd be curious about Harris. I don't know how much value he would have on the transfer portal market. I would say almost everybody, unless Tanner goes to the NBA draft. That would be my concern about Tanner. Obviously, Kimball's not going anywhere. The plan was always for him to miss this season. I don't see the freshman going anywhere. Maybe Dean's Vines, but I don't see the freshman going anywhere. They're going to have to do some work in the portal. And especially if Tanner leaves, they're really going to have to do some work in the portal. So that's very overzealous. We're still halfway through SEC play this season. So I haven't given that too much thought. Any thoughts from you guys?
I'm in agreement with most of what you said. I actually feel I'll just go ahead and say I feel pretty confident. This isn't based on inside information. This is just my judgment and knowledge of how modern NCAA, especially basketball, works. There is a very low chance that Harris is back next year. And I feel like Dean Vines will be asked to find a new home because, I mean, the athleticism is there for him, but like you watch him get in these garbage time minutes, and I'm like, your handle looks like a middle schooler's, and you've airballed more threes than you hit in those garbage time minutes. I initially thought that there would be a chance that Bing or Leverett could be asked to do the same, but these last couple of games, they have proved to me that they have something to give. At the very worst, they're going to be serviceable depth, and that is valuable in today's NCAA. So I think that Bing and Leverett and Kimball will all be here. Tanner, I would say right now, I think he's coming back. That's subject to change as my guess is he'll probably enter the draft process while retaining college eligibility, at least just to get feedback. But as of right now, I would say that he returns. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that Dean's Vines or Harris will return, but I think that those other guys will. But yeah, leaves a lot of work to be done in the portal.
A lot of work to be done in the portal. Unabridged. Oh, nope. That's just a comment or reply. Next up, unabridged. Pitching wise, do you have a guess who our closer will be?
Not really. I could make the case for a number of guys, which is what I'll do. Tim Corbin said in an interview today, by the way, that the bullpen is going to be like a feel it out, like mix and match situation until they find something that sticks. So I promise it's not my lack of information that is causing me to be so non-committal on these answers. The staff is trying to figure out the answers to these questions as they should be. There's a lot of guys who have the potential for increased roles and newcomers and blah, blah, blah. My guess, if you had to make me put money on it, is I think that it would be Luke Guth. He has outstanding stuff. He made, I think, the second most appearances of any pitcher on the roster last year and was really good when he got in. His only issue is that, because I know that they brought him in, and as a freshman, they were saying that he has true starter stuff, and they like him as a starter later in his career. It's just been strength, and he can't really hold that for more than an inning or two. I know that he stayed on campus over the summer to try and really develop that strength and get in the weight room and be able to contend for a starting spot. But unless there is a really dramatic change, I feel like he's an awesome candidate for a closer. They went into last season with Miller Green being their closer. That didn't work out. That said, I don't know why you would immediately rule it out that could happen again. I've heard that Green has been consistent and looks more like himself. Those are probably my top two candidates. I would also say maybe Nate Taylor. I know that he was a starter in the Cape, but he was kind of used more like a Luke Guth at Georgia, where he'd come in for an inning. And I mean, his ERA was just barely over 1 in that come in for an inning and try to get some outs roll. So obviously it wasn't in as high leverage of situations as a closer would be used, but he clearly has the potential to come in and get 3 outs if you need it. So those are the guys. Oh, also, sorry, Jacob Faulkner was an all Ivy League closer, so there is the potential for him to be doing that. I know that can't remember the name of the guy, but the Alabama closer who was all SEC. He was another sidearm guy who came from an Ivy League team last year. So those would be my 4 candidates.
Awesome. Now shift to football. This is how it goes on the premium message board, Alex. Get that brain moving. From Unabridged. In honor of Aguilar suing for another year because Tennessee swung and missed on their top 60 portal quarterbacks, who's one player not named Pavia or Stowers you'd like to give another year of eligibility to for next year? Well, number one, Stowers did have eligibility. He's just entering the NFL draft. He goes on to ask, has to be an offensive lineman, right? I would actually, that's tough. Probably would realistically be an offensive lineman. Maybe I would say Jordan White so that McConnell could stay at guard.
I would say Corday Sidnor.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my other one was Corday Sidnor, but a healthy Corday Sidnor would be him or probably Corday Sidnor and Zaylen Wood would also be like an honorable mention there.
I wouldn't hate Colby Taylor coming back.
Yeah, those are my guys. I think Colby Taylor's below Sidnor and Zaylen Wood and Jordan White and probably Bryce Henderson for me.
I was going to say Henderson has a really good case, not because he is the best player who ran out of eligibility last year, but that he would fill the gap as strong tackle that is looming large in everyone's mind up until the season starts.
Exactly. Now back to baseball. Peter Porker 714. This is your cohort in TDR's baseball coverage. Finally, my second love has returned. Baseball. Number one, what kind of an impact would a Nashville MLB team have on the Vandy boys? I genuinely have no idea.
I don't know either.
I mean, could be a bad one. I just don't know if there would be a strong, good impact.
Yeah, I don't know if that has an impact either direction in my mind because I would, your initial thought would be taking the spotlight off of Vanderbilt as the only baseball show in town, but really that wouldn't do that. I don't think you'd be competing for the same crowd in that way. I also don't really see any deep positives maybe besides having some more professional baseball players around, but Vandy's selling point for their baseball program is certainly not having enough former and current MLB players around. So I don't know. I don't see that going either way. Number two, what's your expected capacity of the Hawk this year with renovations? Legit got ghosted in the group chat when I asked you clowns. I don't know what it is.
Isn't it like 3,100? Am I making that up?
Oh, it was under 3,000. I thought.
It's lower than it was.
Right field. I was going to guess closer to 2,000, maybe even below.
We'll see as more information comes out. We don't
they just haven't released any of that information. I wish I had a better answer. I just don't know.
Yeah, we'll keep the board updated on that. And finally, number three, this is a great freshman pitching class. Who are you most excited about? My pick is Wyatt Nadeau. Nadeau.
Yeah, I hit on Nadeau. He's gonna hit 100 every time he's in there. I'm with that. The basic answer is Aiden Stillman because he was the most highly ranked pitcher coming in. But I'm going to go with Baird because I'm very intrigued by a true 4-pitch mix freshman who was really, really highly thought of, has great stuff, but then kind of let's see if there's a Scott Brown reclamation. I shouldn't say reclamation for a guy who's never even started a game, but he was looked at as a future first rounder and he fell off in high school. And I think that Scott Brown can get him back up there.
Mm-hmm. I'm an Aiden Stillman guy. I know it's chalk, but I'm an Aiden Stillman guy.
No shame in that.
Two more questions here. Well, really 3 questions, 2 more posters from GLH4VU dog. Right now, it looks like there is a pretty solid 4 teams that are going to be 1 seeds for the NCAA tournament. Arizona, Duke, Michigan, and UConn. Which one do you think Vanderbilt matches up against the best in a hypothetical matchup and the worst? Say maybe. I haven't. My knowledge is super limited to the SEC for a large part, but I would say based on the brief amount that I've watched, I really wouldn't want to see this team going up against Michigan.
I would say I wouldn't want Michigan or Duke because Michigan has like massive size, and then Duke has Cameron Boozer.
Yeah, that's why I brought
yeah.
up Michigan was the size. Just watching them, I've only watched a couple games of Michigan, but the first thing that jumps out is Vandy's going to be impossibly outmatched with size.
Yeah, I don't like going up against Duke because I don't like Boozer, and I feel like you would just get an even worse showing from Tyler Tanner as whenever he went up against Darius Acuff. That would be my fear.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a best matchup or a worst. I don't think Vanderbilt matches up well with any of those number one seeds. I don't think many teams in the country match up well, but I think all of them have supreme athleticism and size.
Yeah, sorry, didn't mean to speak over you. I would just say UConn.
Yeah, don't dare you do that again. Or you're not allowed. You're not invited back.
Yeah, I would say UConn just because I think the matchup is a nightmare with both Duke and Michigan. And then even though the matchup isn't quote unquote as bad against Arizona, Arizona hasn't lost a game and they look insane.
Yeah.
So I'd go with UConn, but like you guys said.
Goes on to ask if/when Duke and Frankie are both back, what do you think is the most important thing that they add? Ball handling, defense, experience, or something different, like the ability to control the tempo and force teams to our style of play more. It's simple for me, ball handling.
See, I think it's depth in the backcourt.
Ball handling right now, if Tyler Tanner gets in foul trouble, if he gets in real foul trouble, this team is simply screwed. And they're not screwed because of defense or experience. They're screwed because they don't have a primary ball handler. If Tyler Tanner is not on the court, this team literally cannot get into their offense. And they just don't have they don't have a guy that can get them into their offense. Now that's been kind of band-aided over with Tyler Tanner just playing all but like 3 minutes of every game because he hasn't been in foul trouble. But the moment that Tanner is in foul trouble and Duke and Frankie are both out with injury, and hopefully we don't see that. Hopefully Frankie's back this Saturday. But if Tyler Tanner is out with foul trouble, this offense just can't function. So I agree with what you're saying, but it's easy for me and it's ball handling. Is if a team is good with full court pressure and Tyler Tanner's not on the court, this team literally will be unable to get into their offense. So it's ball handling for me.
Yeah, I think that and then what Trevor said in terms of depth, those two go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Yeah. And last but not least, from yet another door lawyer. I don't know what this means. Interesting way to close it out. I'm a little concerned.
What's the question?
Could Tim Beck, Diego Pavia, Eli Stowers, etc. have beaten the German Iron Blitz of the early 40s?
Is that a callback to the German Reich?
Yeah, that's what I'm concerned about. German and an aerial bombing campaign.
Is that Blitzkrieg?
That's what I would assume.
Yeah, I don't know what that means exactly, but Tim Beck, Diego Pavia, and Eli Stowers could rule the world. So
that's great.
Yes. But I'm not sure what that means. So whatever. The last thing I want to get to, after an interesting way to close out pretty message board questions.
I was like, is that an allusion to like Nazi Germany?
That's why I was concerned reading it.
Yeah.
But the last thing before we close out episode 352, Alex, we talked about it a little bit during the message board questions. Thank you to everybody that posted those. We love reading those every single week. Let's hear that projected starting lineup way too early. And you don't have to go into detail, just super quick, and you'll have an article, I'm sure, at some point soon come out about that projected starting lineup.
I do also, sorry, Trevor, I know you would want me to hit on this, but the one newcomer I didn't talk about, I'm sorry, this might not be the most efficient, and just because I have a couple more things I wanted to hit on. Man of the people, I want to give them information. Jason Esposito. the new hitting coach. He is a part. Well, he's on the team, former Vanderbilt player. Worked for the Cleveland Guardians organization as I think he was the assistant hitting coach. All he worked his way up through the system.
Yep.
To be frank, what I've heard of Jason King and what he did as a hitting coach was not good. I can't remember the name. Who was the guy before King?
Oh,
I can't remember his name.
Shit. Damn it.
I shouldn't be
failing at Hack Squad. The Zyrtex got your brain.
I saw so many tweets to fire this guy that I cannot.
Mike Baxter.
Baxter, yes. Mike Baxter's problem was that he gave the players so much information and didn't know how to package it. Jason King's problem is that he gave the players no information. Both of them resulted in the players looking a bit clueless in their offensive approach. What I have heard is that Jason Esposito is finally the perfect, he's in the Goldilocks zone of he loves analytics. He loves taking advantage of modern sports science and the science of hitting, but that he is outstanding at communicating it in a digestible way to players. Rustin Rigdon recently did an interview. I can't remember who with, but he did an interview where he said, and I quote, the players have a totally new idea of what hitting is that they did not have prior to working with Esposito. And he explicitly called out Esposito's work with them over the last 9 months and how much of a difference that's made with every single player. So we have yet to see the on-field results, but certainly the players think that he is a big upgrade in terms of his ability to coach hitting. And I think that you will see that reflected in the performances of specifically Rustin Rigdon, Braden Holcomb, Colin Barzy, and Brody Johnston, who all have sky-high MLB draft pick potential, but have been average at best over the last several years, although that might be a slight disservice to what Holcomb did in SEC play last year. So yeah, Jason Esposito, I've heard really good things, and I'm very, very, very curious to see if there is a tangible difference in the strategy that Vanderbilt players have when they come to the plate and how they swing the bat. Anyway, to get to the lineup, I'm going to give you starting pitchers. And that's going to be the 3 weekend and 1 midweek. And then I'm just going to go through the position players. For starting pitchers, again, going to be a disappointing answer. I know that Austin Nye and Connor Fennell, lock them in. They're your Friday and Saturday guys. I don't know in what order. My guess is Austin Nye is Friday, Connor Fennell is Saturday. And then it's going to be a feel it out type of vibe for Sunday. I mean, that's been the case with Vanderbilt for the last however many years since Rocker and Leiter, where you had 2 guys locked in and then another, I can't remember who it was, but a solid Sunday guy behind them. Sunday's a little bit unknown. If I had to guess, it would be one of Matthew Shorey, who's similar to Waite, didn't play a lot last year, but went to the Cape and absolutely tore it up. Alex Kranzler or Luke Guth, if Guth can add the strength necessary to be a starting pitcher. Midweek, I'm still going to say Aiden Stillman has that role by the end of the year. I think he'll be the starting midweek pitcher. I'm going to say that the first guy out of the bullpen is Nate Taylor. I think that he's going to be really, really good for Vanderbilt as a bullpen guy. Again, this is all subject to change. I could be very wrong. Again, in that same interview he did today, Tim Corbin said that they had about 6 starting spots figured out and that the bullpen is going to be a mix and match deal. So don't crucify me. First base, I'm going Max Jensen with Carter Johnstone being his backup. Second base, I'm going to say that Mancini will be there again. If it's not Mancini, I think it'll be Rigdon. Shortstop, I'm penciling in Waite and calling my shot there. I know that him and Johnston had a really had a competitive battle for the starting shortstop position, but Brody is an elite third baseman. Waite's arm isn't quite elite, and so I don't know if they would really want to move him to third when you could keep Brody there, and Waite is then an awesome shortstop. Brody at third, unsurprisingly. I'm going to say left field is Logan Johnstone, although he could slot into any of the outfield positions. Any three of these outfielders are interchangeable. Right field is Holcomb. If Tim Corbin benches Braden Holcomb at any point in the season, I'm going to get really upset. Center field is Rustin Rigdon. And then DH, I'm going to say that Mac Whitcomb is there. And then Whitcomb will obviously be the starting center in midweek situations. Or if on a Sunday game, if Barzy's knees are hurting. And if it's not Whitcomb, I think that Carter Johnstone is going to be the DH because his bat is it's potent enough to deserve a real shot.
Incredible stuff.
That's why he's the GOAT.
That's why he's the GOAT. If you are looking for more detailed baseball coverage, that will be coming on thedorreport.com. So subscribe today to thedorreport.com so you can read Alex's incredible insight as well as Colin Bryant's incredible baseball insight. Alex, Trevor, anything else you want to add on episode 352 before we close out a beefy episode?
This Zyrtek's kicking my ass, dude.
Trevor's running on fumes. Alex, anything you want to add?
Shout out Peter Porker, Colin Bryant. He's holding it down. He's been the one who's been churning out the articles recently. So give him a big shout out. He's also been a dog, getting as many practices as he can. So look out for things about the VandyBoys practices with maybe even better information than I've got on who's going to be where.
All right. For myself, Will Byrum, my co-host Trevor Hulan, and our very special guest, Alex Kurbegov. This has been episode 352 of The Door Report, powered by 615 Collectibles.